The government shutdown has finally come to an end, but the impact it left behind is something millions of Americans will be talking about for a long time. Over the past few weeks, families struggled with stalled SNAP benefits, federal workers went without pay, airports moved slower than usual, and basic services were disrupted nationwide. Many people are relieved the shutdown is over, but they still have questions about why it happened in the first place and how the government let it reach this point. Congress failed to agree on a budget, mainly because they could not settle their disagreements over federal spending and certain healthcare-related policies. Once that deadline passed, funding legally ran out, and huge parts of the government were forced to close until a deal was finally reached. Now that things are reopening, Americans are speaking out with relief, frustration, and strong opinions about what this shutdown exposed. Let's take a look at some reactions about the shutdown ending, and be sure to like this video and subscribe for more content like this.
After 43 days, the U.S. government shutdown has officially ended for now. So what exactly was agreed upon? As you likely know, for the last 6 weeks, hundreds of thousands of federal workers were stuck without pay, agencies were frozen, food aid programs were on the brink, and this now became the longest shutdown in U.S. history. And all of this was really about a fight over healthcare money. Democrats wanted to extend expanded health insurance subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, the ones that help millions of people afford their premiums. But Republicans, they refused this, saying that they weren't going to agree to that and wanted to keep spending at the current levels instead. But after all of this chaos, they have come to a deal, and here's what that final deal actually does. So, number one, it reopens the government by funding most federal agencies at their current spending levels until January 30th, 2026. So this is not a full year budget like normal, it's a countdown clock. Agencies can turn back on the lights, but only with a temporary pass. Number two, a few parts of the government do get full year funding. That includes military construction and veterans programs, the legislative branch, and the Department of Agriculture and related agencies like the FDA. On top of that, there's extra money for security around Congress, more funding for the Capitol Police, and for member protection after a spike in threats. Number three, it protects the workers. So the bill guarantees back pay for furloughed employees, orders agencies to reverse layoffs tied to the shutdown, and even blocks the White House Budget Office from using this period to push mass layoffs of federal staff. So the people who lost their job because of the shutdown are supposed to be brought back. And number four, it locks in money for SNAP, the main federal food aid program, through the end of the 2026 fiscal year. This is huge. That's good news because during the shutdown, there was a very much real risk and gaps of food assistance for tens of millions of people. However, here's the big thing that didn't make it into the deal. You know how we were just talking about the main thing they were arguing over, the expanded ACA subsidies? Well, they're not extended in this bill. Instead, the deal only guarantees a Senate vote in December on whether to keep them going. There's no promise it will pass, no guarantee the House will even take it up. So Democrats pretty much gave up immediate health care protections in exchange for reopening the government and getting that future vote. Now, the Republicans on their side, they got what they wanted, a clean short-term funding extension with no new ACA subsidies added and the shutdown pressure lifted without changing overall spending levels. So what does this actually mean for regular people? Well, federal workers will start getting paid, agencies and programs from airports to agriculture will reopen. Food aid is secured for now, but this is not a permanent peace deal. It is just a timeout. If Congress can't agree on a full budget and can't decide what to do with those healthcare subsidies, we could be right back here facing another shutdown after January 30th.
So the stock market's selling off after the government reopened, which you might be like, Stas, what? Wasn't the market supposed to go up? Well, it's not. Let's break down why. So pretty much, guys, what we're seeing is a lot of post-shutdown uncertainty right now because, listen, the government, which, by the way, shut down for the longest period ever in the United States, the government wasn't releasing these key reports that we look at, the jobs report, inflation data, all these different metrics. We weren't getting them during the government shutdown. And well, that's causing some uncertainty because are we going to get these reports? What's the data actually looking like? Are we going to skip the month of October? So there's a lot going on right now. and the market's selling off, but I'm looking at it as an opportunity, right? As always. And overall, we've been seeing selling in tech and a lot of different stocks, so this is just fueling that. You know, Nvidia's down today, Palantir, a lot of these big tech stocks are down, and I don't think it's going to last much longer, but for now, it's here. The selling is here, volatility's up. And again, I think it's an opportunity. I'm taking advantage. I'm adding to my long-term positions. Are you? Let me know. Follow along for more and check out the link in my bio for my portfolio updates. If you want, I'll see you there.
It's official. The government is reopened for the holidays because we've only reached a resolution to have the government opened until January 30th. Next year. How is this possible? I don't know. Why the Dems fold? I don't know. But now that the government open, give me my 3-eye atlas information. Where are the pictures? That's all I want to know. NASA, you said you wasn't giving us no information because the government was closed. Now we're open. All this weird stuff's happening, solar flares and the rocks coming from behind the sun and doing all types of craziness. Give me my 3-eye atlas information so I can stop all the speculation and I can do an official update because the government's open. Shout out the government and yay and all that. But before you close, give me my information because I don't understand what's going on and what's happening. And y'all got pictures. Y'all got high quality photos all the way back from October. Just give me my information.
President Trump has signed the spending package that was passed by both chambers of Congress, officially reopening the government at least until 30 January, which means Congress does not have that much time to get their shit together and try to pass, an actual budget that may fund the government, beyond like 30, 60, 90-day increments. I know. What a thought. Good news is, because they passed it a couple days before the 15th, theoretically, paychecks should be on time or maybe a day or two delayed for the United States military. Also, that means, least, just huge shout out to the Republicans and the 8 Democrats that decided to put their country over their party. The Schumer shutdown accomplished absolutely all. Democrats are infighting, the party's in chaos, but hey, at least the government's reopened, folks are going to get paid, folks can get back to work. And maybe, just maybe, Congress can get together and figure out how to do this long term instead of, temporary band-aids. Maybe.
The government is reopened. Just moments ago, the House voted to adopt the continuing resolution that had been passed in the Senate a few days ago. Thus, the United States government is reopened. And with that comes a ban on intoxicating hemp products. The ban is not set to take effect for a year, so we will have time to see how that will go into effect. Again, the vote was to reopen the government with several provisions, including a ban on intoxicating hemp. More to come.
It has happened. The government is officially reopened as of around 10:25 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, November 12, 2025. However, this is only for another 80 days, so this is only to fund the government through the end of January. Government workers have been advised to please show up to work on Thursday the 13th, and those who were furloughed during this time, there is not yet a pay schedule as to when they will receive their back pay. However, the essential workers that have been working this entire time, they should receive theirs in the next couple of days, at least part of it up to about 70%. That was the agreement with the TSA. For other agencies, it may be different. And regarding the airports and the delays and everything like that, Sean Duffy did say that it may take a few weeks for everything to iron out and get back to normal. So it's not like Thursday, everything just magically is going to be back on, as the airlines have been cutting flights and now they would need to reschedule them or get things back up. There's also people that have been kind of fatigued from working for 40-something days without any pay. So it may take about 2 weeks to get everything at the airport back up and running. Additionally, Republicans did make a promise that in December they will meet about the Affordable Care Act subsidies, which provides health insurance to people who are lower income and cannot afford the high premiums. And that date for that meeting has not been set as of yet.
The longest shutdown in U.S. history is over. The doors to the federal government are open, but don't get too comfortable. The doors may be open today, but the clock is already ticking. Federal employees, we need to have another stand-up meeting. Come on, let's gather. Hi, Hi, if you don't know me, I'm Nolans. I've been with the federal government for 24 years. In my past series, I've been breaking down the impacts of this government shutdown on federal workers and educating the masses because not everybody knows how a shutdown goes. So let's talk about what we really walked back into. Last night, the House voted and they passed a continuing resolution, which is a CR in federal terms. The president ended up signing it late last night. But this CR only funds the government until January 30th, 2026. Now let me break this down to you. The CR funds majority of the federal agencies only until January 30th, 2026, including the agency I work for. So this is only temporary funding. There are only a handful of agencies that got full year funding. And those agencies are people like the VA, FDA, Department of Agriculture, military construction. Oh, and legislative branches such as Congress. Also in that CR, they did end up approving funding for major programs such as SNAP, which will be funded until September 2026. Also, back pay for federal workers. Unfortunately, the CR does not cover extensions for the affordable health care subsidies. And isn't it ironic that the government reopens right before the holidays? Because what usually happens around the holidays? People tend to spend what? Coins. So my federal employees, I need you to be smart. Please don't get too comfortable because we could be back in this situation come January 30th, 2026. And it's not like if our payments will drop into our lap today. We still have to catch up on bills that we had extended. We have, if you took out unemployment, you have to pay that back. You're going to get double tax. Your insurance premiums have been piling up. So we are going to be playing catch up for a little while. So be smart with your finances, plan ahead, because if this shutdown hasn't taught us anything else, it taught us that as soon as it can shut down, it could reopen and shut down again. So federal workers, it's your turn. Now I want to hear from you. How are you feeling about returning to work today? Grateful, relieved, being cautious because it's only temporary? And for everyone else, if you learned anything from this series, let me know in the comments. Or if you were impacted by the government shutdown in any kind of way, let me know in the comments. Share it with a friend, like it, comment. Also, we have a lot of catching up to do as federal agencies. So let me get out of here. Bye. Welcome back.
So the government's reopened. I guess that's kind of cool. I mean, as somebody who's been directly impacted with job and not having a paycheck, I'm looking forward to the government being reopened. I think that's great. As mentioned yesterday, like, it's not ideal, everything that's going on right now because of the healthcare premiums and everything else. The fact that so many politicians were willing to let people go hungry. So many politicians are willing to let people's healthcare premiums skyrocket, double and triple what they currently are. That's really upsetting. It's really, really upsetting. And I made a few videos about this yesterday, and I had a couple comments. By no means am I in support of that, right? By no means do I think that people should be paying double and triple the rates. My main point about my video yesterday was that, like, we can't make do if we're not getting any paycheck, right? So reopening the government is essential in order for people to just be able to pay their basic bills, to be able to pay their rent, to be able to pay their mortgage, to be able to keep their heat on, that type of thing. Healthcare coverage is something that is expansive, and it's going to take a long time to actually get that resolved, especially with the way that our country and our leaders and our politicians tend to think about healthcare. In all reality, healthcare is treated as a business here in the United States instead of as a right, as it is in other countries. And that's the unfortunate thing about it. There are hundreds of thousands of people who have made millions and billions of dollars on the healthcare industry here in the United States. And those people have a heavy hand in politics as well, through lobbying, through all sorts of other stuff. Something y'all might not know, the healthcare industry pays more to lobbyists than like oil, fracking, any of those other industries. The healthcare industry is the biggest lobbying group. That includes pharmaceuticals, that includes research, that includes healthcare, that includes insurance, those types of things. And that's the system that's created this problem, right? That's the system that's created this issue as to like why we are here in the first place. Why are we, a quote unquote developed nation, paying these astronomical amounts of money for healthcare that you can go to other countries and receive for a literal fraction of the cost? And those are the things that have to be addressed. And until we have leaders and politicians in power who are willing to have those conversations and willing to take on those big battles, that's not going to change. And that was my main point yesterday, was if we stand on that soapbox, if we stand on that hill, the government would simply not reopen. It would simply not reopen because we saw for 45 days that politicians were willing to let people go hungry. They were willing for infants and babies to go without formula. They were willing for our elderly to go without their payments and their care. So at the end of the day, if the government being reopened means that people get paychecks and can afford to at least put food on their table and keep a roof over their head, I'm for that.
The 43-day government shutdown is officially over. President Donald Trump signed the new funding bill, ending the longest shutdown in U.S. history and reopening the federal government. But don't let the headlines fool you. This wasn't a clean victory for either side. This was a political hostage crisis that dragged the entire country to the edge. Here's what happened. For 6 weeks, federal workers went unpaid. TSA agents, air traffic controllers, park services, IRS staff, all working without a dime. National parks closed, court cases stalled, and critical programs ran on fumes. Over $1 trillion in economic damage, all because Washington couldn't agree on what comes next for healthcare, subsidies, and budget priorities. The bill doesn't solve those fights. It just pauses them. Agencies will now begin a slow restart. Social security offices, federal loans, food assistance centers, small business operations, all coming back online over the next 48 to 72 hours. But here's the bigger picture. A 43-day shutdown shows just how fragile this government is. One standoff, one stalled vote, and the entire system grinds to a halt. If this can happen over budget paperwork, imagine what happens during a real national emergency.
Breaking news, Donald Trump just signed the funding bill to reopen the government, ending the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Here's everything you need to know from your local Gen Z reporter. That funding bill that was passed by the Senate on Monday was voted on by the House today and was officially passed in a 222 to 209 vote. So what's actually in that bill? The bill provides funding for most federal agencies through January 30th. But that means that if the two parties cannot come to an agreement on a funding extension or a package that funds agencies through the end of the fiscal year, then much of the federal government could shut down again. It fully funds SNAP benefits once again until September 30th of next year. And it guarantees retroactive pay for 1.4 million federal workers that were furloughed or worked without pay during the shutdown. And flight reductions at the 40 busiest airports in the United States is going to stay at 6% instead of jumping to 8 or 10% as the FAA originally planned. The Department of Transportation and the FAA said that more air traffic controllers are starting to come back to work. But as I said in yesterday's video, getting air traffic back to normal is not going to be immediate, even with the government reopening.
Now that it's going to reopen, who won? How does any side claim victory here? I guess they want to kick Chuck Schumer out of leadership now. It's not his fault that 8 Democrats kind of jumped ship and reopened the country, but you know, he's getting the blame for it because he's the minority leader. He's the leader of the Democrats. Obviously, people are saying if he can't wrangle in the Democrats and get them all on the same accord, then he's got to get out of there. And I guess, you know, they can maybe replace him with someone who can, I guess. But my argument is the same here. I really feel like it's strange that so many people are upset with the Democrats for reopening the government, only because they clearly weren't the ones who were not getting a paycheck. You know what I mean? It's very easy to probably sit on the sidelines and think healthcare is a worthy cause. A lot of people are going to be hurt if these healthcare subsidies go away at the end of the year, which is true. That is a very true thing. You know what I mean? I'm not like discounting that. But at the same time, they are not playing with their own dinner plate, with their own mortgage, with their own rent, with their own bills. You know what I mean? I bet if I asked somebody who was missing a paycheck off of this, if they felt like they should continue not getting paid so that our lawmakers could continue trying to work this out, I don't know that they would say yes. Because how long are we talking about here? And that was more so the problem to me. It's not like they were close. It's not like they were talking at all. The Republicans and the Democrats, as far as I know, were not even talking to each other. So we were not any closer to getting a deal on healthcare day 40 than we were day 1. So how long do you keep that going when you're not getting absolutely anywhere? And I think that that's really crappy on the Republicans as well. It sucks that they would just say, well, we're not going to talk to you whatsoever, reopen the government. That's not really how it works. You're supposed to try to, be diplomatic, see what the other side wants. That's what I was saying. That's why there was a 60 vote threshold. If it was just majority rule, then they could have done whatever they wanted anyway. But a 60 vote threshold pretty much almost guarantees they're going to have to work with the other side to figure something out, some kind of a compromise. They said, this is literally the only time that you guys have to listen to us, therefore we're shutting the government down until you guys listen to us. The Republicans were like, no, you can't just do that. We're not going to operate with a gun to our heads. That's what they said. Now that it's going to reopen, who won? How does any side claim victory here? I would argue that nobody won. Because what did we win? You know what I mean? I just see a bunch of losers. I just see a bunch of Americans who lost.